name is Mia Adams, and today I will be talking about why Tier 1 is the most important part of the RTI framework. I would like you to first imagine a scenario. You walk into an elementary classroom where every student is deeply engaged in the material being taught at the front of the room. Not as common as you would think, right? But in this scenario, the lessons are clear to the kids, they understand them, the activities are meaningful and interesting, and the teacher can anticipate the learning needs of the students or what behaviors may be occurring before they become a disruption to the class. That is the purpose of the Tier 1 instruction, if you can do it right. In the response to intervention instruction, or RTI for short, as I'll be saying throughout this video, the foundation that supports everything. When we get Tier 1 right, fewer students fall behind, fewer need intensive interventions, and more feel successful and seen every single day in the classroom and in their day-to-day lives post being in the education system. So what exactly is Tier 1? In simple terms, Tier 1 is the core instruction. So the meat and beans of what the teacher is teaching in the classroom every day. This is instruction that all students receive in the general education classroom. It's the daily teaching, the homework, and the expectations in the classroom that make up most of the day. According to our textbook, Tier 1 instruction should be high quality, it should be research scientific based, and it should be aligned with the state standards that each state has for education depending on the grade level. But most importantly, it should be responsive. This means that teachers use data to guide instruction, and they make adjustments in real time of what's going well and what might need a little more work, and that's okay. When Tier 1 instruction is strong, around 80% of the students in the classroom can meet those grade level expectations without needing the additional supports that are offered to some. The power of the Tier 1 interventions lies in its focus on prevention of bad behaviors rather than remediation. Instead of waiting for a student to act out or waiting for a student to do not so well on a test, Tier 1 is designed to catch those difficulties that students may be experiencing early. Teachers use strategies to identify the different learning gaps that each student may have, the different instruction needs that they may have, and use formative assessments to check for the understanding of each student, like tests. This proactive approach saves time, reduces frustration and burnout in the teacher as well as the students, and fosters a sense of belonging for students who might otherwise slip through the cracks and do not so well in school anymore. When Tier 1 is working as it should, Tiers 2 and 3, which provide those targeted and intensive supports that some students may need, which is okay, becomes a safety net rather than an automatic for lots of students. Let's take an example. Imagine a 5th grade classroom where a student is really struggling with reading. They're behind in their grade level. They're not understanding the books that are being read in class maybe. Instead of pulling them into a small group right away and having them be in an instruction that is different from the rest of their class, the teacher begins by strengthening the Tier 1 instruction, so the meat and beans of the material. She teaches the reading strategies by doing them herself, showing them to all the students, integrates the vocabulary in the books into instructions across the entire day. So it becomes something the student thinks about more and uses real-life scenarios to make the comprehension visible. She tracks data from quick weekly assessments that she has all of the students take and notices the improvement. This is good. Within a few weeks, the kid is doing a lot better, and they don't need the tier 1 and the tier 2 intervention. This is the power of an effective tier 1. It empowers teachers to address challenges within that general education setting quickly, effectively, and without needing to go any further. Another key reason why Tier 1 is so important is that it promotes equity and access. Every student, regardless of their background, socioeconomic status, etc., is able to get that strong foundation of instruction that they need to be able to succeed and move up in the grades and go through their education. When these Tier 1 practices are not consistent and not followed, the teacher isn't really paying attention, certain students are a lot more likely to have to be referred for the interventions in IEP, IDEA framework, etc. Tier 1 instruction relies on culturally responsive teaching, inclusive materials, and collaboration between general and special education. So the general education teacher is talking to the special education teacher and making sure they're on the same page, they're working together, asking for strategies, and they're figuring it out. By ensuring that these core principles are met in Tier 1, they hope to close the gaps before they widen into greater things that take more intervention to resolve. Following on that, the Tier 1 interventions also increase that teacher collaboration. When the educators look at the classroom data, like how the students are doing on the test together, they can share those strategies and that they use to get those good scores and align their expectations so everybody in the school is getting the same treatment. They are able to then create consistency across maybe 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade so that the students know what they're getting every year and it's a lot easier to learn. This kind of collaborations between the teachers means that the students experience consistent instructions, so they always know the expectations that they have. And the standards may be high, but they are consistent, and it is easier for them to reach their highest potential. Of course, Tier 1, though, isn't like a stagnant thing. It is continuous, and it takes continuous collaboration, assessing, and adjusting things daily to meet the needs of the students wherever they are. Our textbook describes this as a responsive teaching system rather than having it be like a stagnant teaching system. When schools embrace this approach, Tier 1 becomes not just a level of support, but a living, evolving process of improvement. Now, it is important to note that a strong Tier 1 doesn't mean that students will never need those Tier 2, 3. Some will, and that's perfectly fine. The goal of this framework isn't to eliminate those interventions, but it's to ensure that interventions build upon a solid core, rather than compensate for a weak one in a special education classroom. So what can schools do to strengthen that Tier 1, though? It starts with things like professional learning, continuing education, and leadership. It plays a role as well. The administrators must prioritize that Tier 1 quality in every classroom observation, coaching session, and school plan. When Tier 1 becomes a shared priority between not only the teachers, but also the administration, it transforms those schools into a culture of prevention and empowerment. When we think about the future of education, it is clear that Tier 1 is more than just a framework level, but a mindset that all educators and administrators must have in order to continuously help students to grow. It reminds us that every student deserves to have the same education that is consistent, it's not confusing, it's easy to follow, so that they can exceed.